Hi, and welcome to Reading Between the Lines. I'm your host, the Water Dog, and on today's episode of our VTES series, we're going to be looking at the discipline of Potence, and we're going to be looking at some of the cards that you can utilize in your library to help affect your crypt that uses the discipline of Potence as its primary discipline. And so, let's get to it. First card we're going to look at today is Stunt Cycle. Stunt Cycle came out in 2004 in the Gehenna set. It currently has only 20 tournament-winning decks that have used Stunt Cycle, and it's a combat card. Only usable at the long range. So at the inferior, it's a strike, 3 range damage, and prevent 1 damage from the opposing minion strike during the strike resolution. If the opposing minion has celerity, he or she can burn a blood to prevent all damage from this strike. At the superior, as above, but for 4 range damage and prevent up to 2. What I like about Stunt Cycle is it has the advantage of fortitude all in one card with a Potence card. So basically you can do prevention and you can do damage. Okay? So it's a good combat card. Number one, it's a good distance, card. You can, maneuver yourself out and get into the long range, or if your opponent moves out towards long range. And so what the card is good for me is the fact that you're able to do a lot of damage, 3 at the inferior, 4 at the superior, and prevent damage. 1 at the inferior, 2 at the superior. This is a great card, especially if you're playing Bruja, because Bruja depends mainly on Potence, and it also depends on celerity. And with celerity, you can get the maneuver, and of course with Potence, you can get, the thing that Potence does better than anything else, which is, punch somebody in the mouth. So as a card that allows you to do offense and defense at the same time, Stunt Cycle is really good. And let's face it, of all of the what I would call the major disciplines, we're talking about aspects, animalism, celerity, protean, all of those original major disciplines that you get in the very first set of Jihad and VTES. Potence is the one that has the fewest really playable cards. There's not a whole lot, but the ones that are going to be commonly used and played are things like, the Torn Signpost and the Immortal Grapple. Well, trying different ways to use Potence, I think, is a valuable thing. And for me, for combat, especially when you're getting yourself into a long-range position, Stunt Cycle is a great card. A new card on the block that I think is kind of a game changer is Roundhouse. Now, Roundhouse came in 2020 in the 5th edition. There are currently no decks for the tournament-winning database that uses this card. So let's talk about what Roundhouse does. First off, it's a combat card, once again. At the inferior, it's a strike, hand strike at +2 damage. And at the superior, it's a strike, hand strike at +3 damage. Now, why is this good? Well, because now at the inferior, you're hitting for 3. And at the superior, you're hitting for 4. The other great thing is it doesn't cost you any blood to play it. So you're able to do a lot of damage, very similar to Stunt Cycle, because Stunt Cycle doesn't cost you any blood either. You have no blood that's going to cost you to use this card. Okay? Now, some people will say, well, don't forget about Torn Signpost. Well, Torn Signpost, what it does is it sets your strength. So it sets your strength at the inferior at 2, and it sets your strength at the superior at 3. Roundhouse allows you to do more damage. It allows you to do more damage. And so it's a greater strike card. Because let's face it, when you look at some of the other Potence cards like Pushing the Limit and Slam, they don't hit for as much, and those cards even cost you 1 blood. Roundhouse costs you no blood. So it's a good combat card, okay? It does more damage than the Torn Signpost, okay? And so you're able to swing and hit for more with this one card that's costing you absolutely nothing. So, Roundhouse, give it a shot. Our next card is an old standard card. It's been around since 1996. It came out in the Sabbath set, and that's Disarm. It is a great card to follow up Roundhouse. So, once again, a combat card. Let's look at it. At the inferior, only usable at the end of a round of combat in which this vampire successfully inflicted more damage at close range than the opposing vampire. Not usable by a vampire going into total war. Put this card on the opposing vampire and send that vampire to torpor. The vampire with this card has -1 strength. He or she may burn this card by burning 3 blood. A vampire can only have 1 disarm. At the superior, as above, but the vampire with this card has -2 strength. So, there's nothing I like more than watching somebody, particularly more than anybody else, my predator, not so much my prey, but my predator, because if I'm doing combat, we'll get into this discussion later, but I never have combat going to the left. I'm always combating to the right, and that's mainly because I'm going to hit my predator and I'm going to hit my second ally. I'm always going after my predator first and my second allied second. I want to take out those vampires, and we'll get into that strategy a little bit later. But, well, I should say later on some other videos, because I know it's going to be a hot button topic when I get into it. But in any case, so what I love is you go in and you have Roundhouse as your strike, and then you follow it up with Disarm. So like I said, there's nothing I like more than to see my predator to get out, a wonderful 7-cap, 8-cap vampire. They've already spent that, that pulling that vampire, and as soon as they get them into play, have my Jimmy Dunn go out and just beat the crap out of them, okay? Hit them with a Roundhouse and then follow it up with a Disarm, and now they're stuck in torpor. And so they've wasted all of that capital to get that one vampire out, and you're ready now to move in the other direction. So I love the fact that that's really what Disarm does, is it really helps neutralize vampires. The old standard used to be Torn Signposts and Disarm. Well, to me now it's Roundhouse and Disarm. I like the fact that when you're playing combat, you use as few of cards as you possibly can to do what you need to do. Some people will say, well, what about combat ends? Well, I always say, you know what you do? You enter another combat, because if you're playing low cap, inferior, potent vampires, okay? So let's say, for example, you're playing with Arnold Simpson, or you're playing with Paul DiCarlo, okay? These are 2-cap vampires that can put an 8-cap vampire into torpor very quickly. And so there's a lot of inter-combat cards. So if Jimmy Dunn doesn't get them, Arnold's going to get them. And if Arnold doesn't get them, Paul's going to get them. And it's that simple. You just go boom, boom, boom. And so that's what I like about Roundhouse Disarm. It's a 2-card combo. It's easy to get the combo off, and you just rock and roll. Now we're going to get to one of my favorite, once again, I call this the water dog card, because it seems like to me I'm like one of the very few people that plays with these cards. But that's called Street Cred. Street Cred. And Street Cred, it currently only has 6 decks, tournament winning decks, that have it in its database, okay? And once again, I love it in a Jimmy Dunn deck, because what Street Cred does is, once it gets a combat card, it does cost you 1 blood off your vampire. But here's what it is. Only usable at the end of a round of combat in which this vampire successfully inflicted more damage than the opposing minion, okay? At the inferior, move 1 blood from the blood bank to a younger vampire in your uncontrolled region. A vampire can play only 1 Street Cred each turn. At superior, as above, but move 2 blood. So, this is a way to basically, enchant down, okay? Or govern down. And that's through combat. And so I love that. So, it's the 3rd card in my deck, okay? So if I'm playing a Potence deck, I'm going Roundhouse, Disarm, Street Cred, okay? And if you're playing with a really, really good, Jimmy Dunn or, Richter deck, because I like Richter because he's at +1 strength, but they have the same major abilities, which is Potence, Celerity, and Fortitude. Well, then basically you're playing with the Celerity card Flash, because that gives you the maneuver, okay? So if somebody maneuvers too long, you can maneuver back to close, and it gives you a press, okay? So what's great about it is you can go Roundhouse, alrighty, then Street Cred, Flash, do another round, okay? And now all of a sudden you're adding pull from the blood bank to your vampires in your uncontrolled region, and you're able to get your vampires out faster, you're able to get more out, and also it's a way to garner pull. So for a Potence deck, it's a way to gain pull, to keep your blood supply going. So it does a lot of things. I think Street Cred is a card that's fun. You don't typically are going to see it in competitive But I think especially try it out for casual fun. Give Street Cred a crack, because I think it's a very good card. I like to play typically with about 6 to 7 in one of my Potence combat decks. I like the card simply for the value that it gets, and the fact that it's one of the few ways that a Potence deck can gain pull or help you to basically quote unquote govern out a younger vampire faster. Folks, thanks again for tuning in to Reading Between the Lines. If you like what you're seeing, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay? Until then, this is the Water Dog. Y'all take care.